Coaching teens has always been a calling of mine, but I've never been sure how to approach this target market due to the duality of influence. Do you suggest marketing to high schools through guidance through a guidance department? What do you think the number one marketing technique in general is? Example: social media, blogs, networking, word of mouth. Okay, so a lot to get there, and so let me see if I can help you process this really quick. One of the things that I said in the Mentor Monday, if you go back and you read that thing, I said the first consideration is that you're not actually simply marketing to a teenager. You're actually marketing to both. You are both bringing your influence, bringing your experience to both, and you're also building trust with both, because you have to have buy-in both from the parent and from the teenager. In this day and age, there's been a lot of changes. I'm going to address a couple of those, but there's been a lot of changes with how parents and teens relate over the last couple of decades compared to when many of us were growing up. For me, I'm a Gen Xer, so I was born in 1974. I'm in my 40s now, and the way that we were related to our parents back then was really different. My dad used to always tell me, and maybe you guys heard this. My dad used to always tell me, children should be seen and not heard. And so, what did that mean? Is that my voice kind of didn't matter that much, and I didn't have a whole lot of influence in my house, and I was a latchkey kid, so I stayed indoors all day long, unless my brother or sister were around. But that was kind of the way that parents were parenting in the late 70s, early 80s, because of safety stuff, and both husband and wife, or whatever, both guardians were out in the workplace during the day. And so, because of these things, it means that that there's been a lot of change over the last couple of decades towards how parents and guardians partner. They actually partner with their teens a lot more on major decisions. And some of those, and I showed some of those statistics on Monday, that when it comes to buying computers, buying technology, buying phones, major purchases like even couches, all kinds of things. What school are they going to go to? It's actually a partnership that is happening between teens and between adults these days, where kids actually have more of a voice, more influence in major buying decisions in their homes. And so, because of that, teens don't need a bunch of money. When it comes to going out and buying things, all they need to do is say, hey, I think this would be a really good investment. And so parents are getting turned on to Netflix, a lot of other things. They actually adopted these kinds of things and these kinds of behaviors in their usage of technology and everything from their kids. And for the last couple of decades, their kids have actually been teaching them how to use technology and how to be relevant in the world. So it's an interesting world where teens actually have a lot of influence in their homes. And so what that means is that we actually have two people. If we're going to be coaches to teens, we actually have two people who we need to convince. But the interesting thing is, and I think when it comes down to the marketing aspect of things, as far as the selling aspect, I still think that that a lot of that is going to weigh heavily on the parent as they're making kind of decisions on that, because ultimately it is going to come out of the parent's pocketbook. And I believe that the way that most parents are going to look at it when they're weighing out things, and the fact that your service isn't cheap, is that if we do it with excellence, if we prove that we can help a teen get to the next level with whatever issue it is that we're helping them with, and if they see that their teen is relating to it and values it, like they are staying motivated and engaged with it, then a parent doesn't really have a problem paying for that service. Like I said on Monday in that little blog, parents have been spending thousands of dollars on kids every year for a long time, and more than ever, the parents of today. So we're talking about Gen X parents, but also millennial parents, because millennials aren't a bunch of 15-year-olds anymore. The oldest millennials are nearly 40 years old, and the youngest millennials are still in their 20s, and they're having kids, and they're parenting, and they actually like the support, like the help. And so this is an incredible opportunity for you. And so here's what I would say: the considerations, because you're asking specifically about marketing and how do we get out there. Here's the first considerations that I would say. First of all, You got to choose a focal point for your coaching. I don't think that you're going to get any traction by saying that you are a teen coach. Being a teen coach is like saying that I'm just a generalist life coach. Life is about this big. And I think that most people are doing themselves a disservice by just saying, oh, I'm a life coach, because it's so generalist. And as it is, coaching's not tangible. So I've got to create a niche. And so what we're doing is the coaching a teen is not a niche. Okay. That is not a niche. That's a target market. And so you said that actually really well when you asked the question, so that everybody knows this. Teen coaching is not a niche. Teen is your target. This is your ideal client. This is the person that you want to help. Your niche is what you're actually helping people with. It's your focal point. It's where you're going to be doing the magic. And so that's why life coach is very generalist. What we want to do is we want to dial that in, and create a little bit of a funnel. So when you create your focal point, I think that what we have to do between teens and parents, guardians, is that we've got to find some things that they commonly find interesting, that they are commonly value, and they would commonly see the benefit in. And I believe, starting out, that there are a handful of places that you can begin to look at, that I believe that all parents, all guardians are going to be equally as interested in as their teen, maybe for a little bit different reasons, but there's a few key areas that I believe that you can look into that is going to be relevant for pretty much parents globally. And here's what I believe that they are. That first niche area for coaching teens is academics, because during this span of time, school is taking up the vast majority of a teen's waking moments. So they're either going to bed on a schedule that is all focused on school. They are getting up on a schedule that is all focused on school. Their entire morning ritual, they are going to school all day, and then they're coming home and they're talking about school. They're stressing about school. They're also doing homework. And so we really have a large chunk of time that is being spent either preparing for school, going to school, trying to figure out what kind of school you're going to or whatever. And so academics is a really big part of a teen's life. And so whether that teen is someone who is struggling academically, or it's a student who is straight A's, you can bet that there's a lot of parents and teens who are interested in support in this area and looking for coaching in this area. Life balance is another thing that, I was saying that there's a difference between teens today and the way that parents relate to them, compared to the way that many of us grew up. Children of the 80s and younger had to come up with ideas of occupying their time. And some of you will look on Facebook or social media, and someone will say, "Oh, this is how I hung out when I was a kid. Here's our bicycles. Here's what group chat was for us. It's a group of kids hanging out, and they're sitting on their bicycles at the same time, or whatever. And how teens today can't relate." And it's true. We had the burden of figuring out what we're going to do, and boredom was just kind of something that we dealt with. I don't know really what we dealt with in boredom back then, but these days kids don't ever have to deal with boredom, because somehow parents have taken the ownership of managing their schedule, managing their downtime. Kids are overbooked. They are doing more stuff than they have ever done, and staying busy and staying on, because they're also on these devices. So there's never any kind of downtime in the average teen's life. And for a lot of parents, they think that busyness equals a child staying out of trouble. And maybe there's some truth about that. But the reality is that because there is no downtime, kids have anxiety, they have fear of missing out. They have all of these different things that's going, because in their mind, even at 10 o'clock at night, they're looking at their phone and they're thinking they're missing out. And it's always this sense of go, go, go. And so this is a huge opportunity for coaches to work with teens. Career planning, another really big one. And the reason why now more than ever is that there's a skyrocketing cost of education these days. in the United States, the cost of education has risen faster than medical costs. I mean, like exponentially more. And so it used to be that you could tell your kids, go to college, spend the first 2 years in college figuring it out. It really doesn't matter. You can declare a major, your third year in, or even your fourth year, figure it out. Or you can change your major. No big deal. Except that it's costing kids so much, and they're watching the millennials who graduated from college, how they're burdened with debt, and we're rethinking it. Particularly Gen X parents and millennial parents are saying, hey, you know what? uh, with that kind of debt, also with an education that does not guarantee you a job and doesn't guarantee you a job that can get you out from under that debt, it may not make sense to go to college anymore. Should you be going to a trade school? Is there another option? Is there another creative option around this? And so these are really big opportunities that kids who are trying to sort this out and trying to figure things out, that they are going to ask the questions. What are these big things? Because these are conversations that both parents and both kids are talking about right now. And then there's some other things. What's another one? A really big one is relationships, which is the other, and for a teenager, the most important aspect of their life right now. Managing relationship. How do you deal with conflict? How do you have conversation? How do you have conversations with adults? How do you manage conflict? There are all of these skills that many of them, quite frankly, when I was growing up, my parents taught me stuff. Like yesterday's the funniest thing. I was with my 6-year-old, and I was like, Shiloh, have I ever taught you how to shake hands? And she was like, no. I'm like, okay, come here, let me show you. And I taught her how to shake hands, how to make eye contact with someone, how to hold a hand very firmly, and how to actually place your hand within someone else's hand. I remember my dad teaching me that when I was a little bitty kid. And as I grew older, every time I would shake someone's hand, they would actually kind of be embarrassed because I would do it very firmly, because it was something that I was taught as a child. And we realized that there's a lot of these skills that sometimes kids have been a little bit so overparented that they are losing. And I believe Mirtha just put a comment about life skills and everything else. This is what is part of it, with, I believe, in relationship skills, and yes, life skills, even managing budget, even managing finances, and some of those other kinds of things. These are some areas right now that I believe that parents are starting to recognize and starting to wake up, because as much as people have done millennial bashing and everything over the last handful of years and stuff like that, it is awakening parents to say, hey, you know what, we need to do something a little bit more. We need to be able to engage, invest in our children. And so now they're willing, and that's what I said about this generation of parents, they're willing to get the help. The other thing that I would say is true as well is that parents know that they're not the only voice, and as a teen is emerging, they need another voice in their life, and hopefully a voice that is going to affirm them, and it's also going to, in all the good, in all the best ways, that they are going to mirror the voice of the parent and encourage, build up, challenge in a really good way. And so this is a time for a coach to really emerge within all of those things. And so these are some real key areas that right now I believe that we could talk about a lot of other things like self-image and those kinds of things. Those are really big parts, and I would still make that fall under relationships, because it's relating to self. And so there's all of these different areas where coaches can emerge and kind of really be a support mechanism in this really difficult, really volatile, dynamic transition kind of thing. And so these are areas that you can niche within. But I would also add that one of the best ways for you to determine your niche, for one, you need to be passionate about whatever that area is. You need to have a lot of keen interest in that area, whether that be self-image or career planning or whatever. You need to be actually engaged in it. And you also need to be aware of what the interest for parents are. what I've always told our coaches to do is if you want to determine your niche, you need to find out what kinds of pain points that parents have. You need to know what their challenges is and what challenges are and what their real greatest desires are. And so one of the ways of actually determining your niche and determining your marketing message, and this is what I'm making the bridge towards, is to actually ask what those questions are. What are the challenges? What are the pain points? And this is how we get to our marketing message. Now that I know what the niche is, they're telling me basically their needs, the solutions that they need to get in their life. And all I need to do is in my marketing message, I need it to answer that question. Can you help me? Can you help me with this? And so once I know what the challenges are, then I craft my message around the challenges. And so I want to use language that parents would use. I want to really confront, I want to really speak to the pain points, because that's really all that marketing really is, at least good marketing and any kind of good selling is that whatever problem there is, whatever pain point there is, whatever challenge that there is that we solve it. And so we're not really selling coaching, because that's not ever what we sell. We never sell coaching. What we sell is the result. So what impact does your coaching bring into the life of that parent, bring into the life of that guardian, and bring into the life of the teenager themselves? That's what the focus of our messaging is. That's what we're going to talk about. And so what does a teen with a higher degree of self-image look like? What is a child or a teen that has better balance in their life? What does it look like for a teen who absolutely knows what they want in their life, and they've got a plan towards their life academically or towards their career and all that? If they've charted a course, and most children and parents have not charted a course towards what their future is, what would that look like if we actually? And so we need to give them a picture of what that end game looks like, so that it becomes really, really tangible for them. And so what else? Let's go to the other parts of this question, which were, do you suggest marketing to high schools, maybe through guidance department, those kinds of things? Here's what I would say. With any kind of marketing, you need to know where your target market is. You need to know where your ideal client currently is. That is the first step of getting that message out there, is that those people actually exist in some places right now, and there's usually a lot of them, and they all relate to one another. And so do I think that marketing to high schools or through the guidance department is a good idea? Well, let's think about this a little bit more. Marketing, in the way that most people think about things, is just simply doing a banner ad or doing a sign somewhere or something like that. That's not what I want us to think about in terms of coaching ever, because we're in the relationship business. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to create opportunities where you have a personal, meaningful touch with that other individual. And I don't care what kind of coaching that you're doing, you need to think about what I am doing, how my messaging, and how every way that I am conducting my business, how it's serving the target market that I'm trying to convert into becoming clients. And to do that, it has to be a meaningful touch. And we know that you need to have between 5 to 8 meaningful touches before trust and likability has been built, so that they move over into being converted into a client. So in my mind, my job is not to advertise. My job is not to market. That is the lowest level of doing business, and it's not going to have a whole lot of success and probably not going to give you a lot of traction. What I've got to think about as a coach is, how can I have meaningful connection with my target market right now? How can I have and for this particularly, how can I have a meaningful connection with parents? How can I have a meaningful connection with teens that is appropriate and furthers them, so that I build trust and likability, and hopefully ultimately it leads to a client? So if I'm going to do something in a school, and I will say, schools are a great opportunity for a number of different reasons. I don't think of it as handing out flyers and trying to market in the, and I'm not trying to get in the bulletin somewhere, and I'm not trying to get on the screen so much unless I'm just reinforcing something. What I want to do is I want to figure out how in this school, where these teens are spending so much of their time, how do I engage relationally this school as a whole? How do I engage? And so teachers can help us with that, principals can help us with that, uh, coaches, like athletic coaches that are working on staff or whatever. Any number of those people can help us as we become. And this is what I would say, when my daughter was going to an elementary school in San Diego, we decided that we were going to be really engaged in our local elementary school, because we really wanted to do that. And so I joined the PTA there. I thought it was kind of dysfunctional, quite frankly. I thought that they did a lot of stuff that didn't generate a lot of money and everything else. But what my heart was is that I'm not trying to come in here and take over or criticize or whatever. I'm going to look for opportunities where I can serve. And I'm really good at really visioneering stuff and big event kinds of things and all of that other stuff. So I go there, and yes, I went to their meetings, and I encouraged people and said, hey, that's a really great idea, those kinds of things. But basically, I put a toe in, and I had to find the group of people who would really receive me really well. And what ended up happening is they had a spring event that was coming up. It was kind of like the biggest event of the year, which was actually a very small event because they were always trying to do events that also were money makers. Well, I ended up taking over the event. It was one of those opportunities that no one stepped up, so I stepped up. I took over the event. I ended up hiring people. I used their meager budget to hire people to run the event themselves so that we needed no volunteer help, and that everybody who usually worked and everything in the school actually got to enjoy it. And they made about $40,000 off of the night, which more than quadrupled anything that they had ever made. And they also had the largest attendance by hundreds of people than they ever had. And after that point, after that line was crossed, where I brought something of value, and I'm just bringing something, and they knew that I was a coach, and they knew some of those other kinds of things, and I wasn't trying to coach teens. But what ended up happening was that the doors for the school flew wide open. The principal recognized me, everything else. And so I would get invited to things. I would be introduced to people and everything else because I had served there with another area, because I'm a business person. I know how to do this thing, and I realize I'm dealing with people who aren't business people. I can't get mad at them for not being visionary because that's what I am. And so I bring my gifting. And see, this is the interesting thing, is that it doesn't always have to look like coaching when you go in and serve in those places. Once you do, you build trust, you build likability, and part of it's just showing up. Part of it is just being a face in there. And see, schools never really get, and I'd say this, teachers, administrators in schools, we don't honor them very well in our culture in general, at least in American culture. And being able to be there and be an advocate for them and to be an advocate for parents. That's why I joined a parent thing. And so parents are seeing me, I'm mingling with people, and there's opportunity to go in there and serve, because no one is really serving in the schools without an agenda. So you don't have to have a kid there. You can actually choose a school and to find places where you can engage and the relationship can kind of develop. Parents will get to know you. You can attend baseball games, football games, sports events, any kind of event that's around there. You don't have to be at the entire thing. Just go in there, make an appearance, and build relationships. What is happening is that every time that you show up, you are a face that everyone is associating with the school and advancing what they're trying to do. And what happens is that your value and everything shoots up to parents because they see you as someone who's trying to bring something, not someone who's just trying to get something. So conversations begin to happen. People are opening doors, and you're meeting parents, and so the equity continues to build. And that's how relationally how things are formed ends up being, at the end of the day, how business gets done and how people are converted over to becoming clients at that point. And so I think that there is a huge win I think that there is a major win for you to be able to go into schools, do these kinds of things. Now, the second question is, do you think that that social media, blogs, networking, or word of mouth, which one's the best? Well, here's what I would say. What is going to go the fastest is anything that's in your local area where you have where they can see a human face, where you're there. That can happen really, really fast. So that part is really easy to me because I know that the touches there doesn't have to be as many. Can you do it through social media? Can you do it through blogging and all of those other kinds of things? Yeah, I believe that you can, but you are going to have to drill in. If you're going to try to do online coaching for parents of teens and stuff like that, you're going to have to drill your messaging down. You're going to have to really get it in there and get it in front of people. And I'm not saying that you can't do it. I'm just saying that you're going to have a strategy. You're going to have a strategy for reaching out and touching both parents and teens, and you're going to have content that consistently has really great value within it. And that does take a little bit longer. You know, it may take you a few months before you have enough content where you're able to really make a connection and build a relationship with people through it. Meanwhile, in a school setting, I believe that can happen, and in your community, I believe that can happen really, really fast. And there's a lot of other things that you can do in school settings. You know, as you're building those relationships, you might host a workshop. You might host a workshop for parents that that is free or really low cost, you know, as you're starting out, because you're trying to engage them and you're starting to create this kind of conversation. You know, there's just so many different opportunities that's in there. You know, one of those things that you know, most schools really invest heavily in their athletics programs because it's a place of pride. Maybe you go in and you help some of those athletes get out of their slumps, because slumps are all just mental things. They're not actually a person cannot get in a 10-game slump. It's all mental. You know, unless somebody's just doing something weird in their technique, this is an opportunity for a coach to go in and partner and work in a capacity so that people know you. What about it's exam time or getting close to exam time? Can you go in there and you can help them have some balance, help them start taking some steps towards their goals or whatever? You know, schools are generally underfunded, and so they're wide open for this kind of help. And so there's a lot of ways to serve that is not coaching, but there's absolutely some ways that you can go in and do some things. So hopefully that's helpful and encouraging for you. I do believe, again, that this is a great opportunity for you to coach. I believe that this is a great opportunity for any coaches who are particularly interested in coaching teens. It's a viable market. It's a very underserved market, and I would really encourage you to go after it if it's something that you're interested in. So hopefully that's helpful.